here, and we're already behind schedule. So, first item under new business is a legislative focus for the 2019 session. As we discussed in our previous joint meeting, it's very important that we've kind of strategized during the summer what our priorities as a collective governing body is going to be for the community, because once the session gets started, it's fast and it's very hard to coordinate testimony and letters and all of that. So I know School Board Member Toll has something she would like to start us off with. I also would ask, we have with us Representative Cloutier and Representative Gauthier. So I appreciate your time. I know I did invite our senator, but she was unable to make it because of her schedule. And I did hear from Representative O'Connor. I had thought he intended to participate, but I don't think he was able to make it. Something must have happened at the last minute. So, in the course of, I think what we would like to hear is from the school board and city council first, what we think our priorities might be, and then hear the response from the legislators, unless you guys have some burning comments that you want to make beforehand.
I have a couple of comments I'd like to make.
Okay.
Number one is on adequate education. As I've been going down through a lot of paperwork and a lot of government documents, I find that, and it says in the Constitution of New Hampshire, that any mandate that the state of New Hampshire puts up, they have to pay for. And so I've got an idea, a couple ideas, but I have one idea that could bear a little fruit, is the cities and towns should get together and say, we only provide as an education that we're going to pay for is ABC. And then they say, no, you got to do X, Y, Z. Then that's a good case to pressure them into paying for it. That's one thing right there. Another thing is that it's what I hear from Representative Cloutier, and I've been watching it too, is that we have at the U.S. Supreme Court, we have a case that came up and says about sports bars, about sports gambling and sports bars and all that in general. And that's going to go before a lot of states, and a lot of states are going to go for that. And that could be a brand new revenue, even much better than Keno. And my thought is to put that within the Education Trust Fund. Keno, I'd like to see Keno expanded, and I would like to see that into the Education Trust Fund also.
So what I'm hearing from you is that you do agree that funding public education is a big deal for this community.
Yes, I've always been behind the CLAREMONT decisions, 1, 2, and 3. I've been reviewing those, and there's also a big study committee, which is called HB 356, which was married to the bill that I sponsored about to stop the freeze, the going away of the stabilization grant. And a lot of people said, oh, well, that was killed and your bill failed and all that stuff. It didn't fail. It wasn't killed. It was absorbed into a bunch of other bills, and it became HB 356. Now, I've sent around the website. I sent a lot of information. I've sent a lot of information to a number of the school board members and city councilors, the one I had the emails to. And I sent that information around. And I believe there's going to be a lot of legislation this year. We're up on budget year. And we have a good chance of forcing the state to the mat to say, you need to do a lot better job with funding education. It's unfair very unfair for the taxpayers of any community to be brought to their knees like we have here in CLAREMONT.
Can I ask a question? Is that okay?
I just want to give Representative Cloutier a chance to speak, and then we can ask questions.
I came here tonight, Madam Mayor and Mr. School Board Chairman, to mainly listen to what you think some of the legislators like Representative Gothier and I, assuming we are sent back. Of course, if we aren't, then it will be whoever takes our places. Well, what do you think the focus should be on behalf of both the city and the school district first? And then I don't know, share thoughts. There'll probably be some common points and, maybe some things that we as legislators want to push as well. But mainly, I came here, first of all, to listen, to see what you would like to do in 2019, especially if both Representative Gothier and I are returned, along with the other people who are running.
Okay. Did you?
Oh, Jason, yes.
I just wanted to ask either one of our reps, perhaps you know this and maybe you don't. So we get a rep for every 3,500 people in our population, right? So if we added up all of our small towns that have this problem, and then we add up how many reps exist from that, and we add up how many reps actually exist in Manchester, Nashua, Concord, and the southern part of the state that don't have this issue, all of what we're doing doesn't make a difference. It sounds like it's a loaded game to me. The fact is we're always outnumbered by the bigger places that don't have these issues. So, and I'm take this as respectfully as possible. Can you really accomplish anything down there?
I'm not here to debate, number one.
I'm just asking a question.
Stop. I'm not here to debate. Number one is that every single town and city in this state has this problem. So just because they're big and large and all that stuff, they have a problem.
And I would agree. I think the superintendent and I have been to enough of those hearings that it is across the board in varying degrees, but every community at this point, it's a critical mass. So what I'd like to do is, school board member Toll had asked to speak to this, the education funding issue, and
I can't remember the date, but we had a review about school funding 101, education funding 101, with the lawyers that started it, and we felt it needed to be fast-tracked and worked on again. So our school board has developed a subcommittee. Mr. McGoodwin sent out an update of Pittsfield, who had a working meeting, a workshop yesterday or the day before. They had over 100 participants, both legislators, citizens, and I believe there was 20 districts that showed up for this meeting. And we've invited Unity to be a part of our subcommittee. And after I pass these out for you, I would like, if you're interested in helping us formulate our subcommittee and catapulting this forward, please get a hold of Frank or Marjorie. I think that this is where we need to go in a lot of our efforts, so.
Can I just piggyback on
sure.
her comments? So I read through and thank you for sending it out, Dr. Goodwin. The lawyers involved with this sort of point at two different ways of approaching this. One being Claremont 3, and continuing that course of action. Another course of action is to really put our elected officials and, as a group, state of New Hampshire, make sure that the people we are voting for, people we are electing, have their city, the best interests of their city in their heart, not following the party line. And they told us this does not split down partisan lines. Both Republicans and Democrats over the years have dropped the ball in addressing this larger issue. And personally, I've already contacted the two gubernatorial candidates, just throwing a feeler out to them as a community member, that this is a concern here. I sent one to Governor Sununu and the Democratic candidate, and I can't remember her name. I have not heard back from either one of them. But I think as a group, as a city, I know when we heard from the lawyers, Keene is involved with this. Keene's interested in participating. I know Newport is. I've already talked to Dr. Gallagher. She's all in. Certainly we are. Pittsfield is. And I agree with what Mayor Lovett just said. I think it has come to a critical mass. I think that it's affecting everyone. We heard last night in our board meeting, we talked about catastrophic aid for our special ed kids that incur huge costs to provide them an adequate education. And that has been getting chipped away at, leaving the state is saying, well, this year we're only paying 60% of above 55,000. We have to pay the first 50,000. Then after that, the state picks up part of it, but that state part of it is diminishing, downshifting more back to the local communities. So I think what I would like to see as a Claremont board, and certainly Claremont as a community, is have these candidates here and really act as, and again, talk about the need for a communication person, really have a unified front in confronting candidates with the expectation of what your constituency expects from you when you get down to Concord. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Very well said. I have copies, and all the school board people have already got this, so I would like just the city council at this point. Oh, why don't I just do it this way? It'd be a lot easier.
It is very interesting reading, I must say.
Oh, so, I know Representative Cloutier had his arm up.
Yeah, and I think your point, Chair Sprague, is that it comes from the top. I mean, we as legislators, I certainly have been involved with this for years, and I'm very aware, and believe me, of Claremont's plight. I've tried to advocate on behalf of the community in Concord to other legislators. I think some of the agree with me, and they are in the same boat, especially up in Coos County, Grafton, especially some of the poor communities. And I think a lot of people statewide have, mixed feelings about property taxes, but I think in some of the southern part, to sort of allude to what Mr. Benware was saying, that the property tax is not as much of a burden in some communities because they're wealthier, that have more money to spend. But in our community, it's not just the property, it's because we don't have the wages to pay them, as I tell some of my colleagues. And I did want to say about the gubernatorial candidates, I know Governor Sununu is running for re-election. I don't know if he is being opposed at all in the Republican primary. I know there are two, and the Democrat, and I don't know about maybe the Libertarian Party has a candidate. In the Democratic Party has two candidates. One is former Senator Molly Kelly of, I guess he's now from Harrisville, representing Cheshire County, and I would certainly urge you to talk with her. She certainly believes in education. But the other one is former Portsmouth Mayor Steve Marchand, who is, I think, without being biased, I think he's got some unique solutions to education funding. And since he's a former mayor, he understands some of the issues as far as downshifting, even though Portsmouth is probably a little bit better off than Claremont is. And so I would urge you to talk with all three of the major candidates I'm aware of, and as I said, there may be some others out there, and have them come to Claremont. I know both former Mayor Marchand and Senator Kelly have already been here. They've been to Democratic Party meetings, but I'm sure they're going to come back. Hopefully the Governor Sununu will come back. I know I have been disappointed he hasn't been back here more. I was glad he came, but he didn't come until last summer, because I really wanted to come to listen to us, see what we're doing right, but at the same time, see what we need as far as help, see what our challenges are. And also, I did go to the meeting recently where you had Tom Kinnair and I guess Mr. Tobin, who were here about another lawsuit, and you are thinking about participating, and that's, if you want to do that, that's fine. I can't blame you. I've been involved with it before. And although we did yield some results, at least defining an adequate education and estimating the cost, which I think is ridiculously low. It was a step forward, but we may have to go, the school districts like Claremont may have to go back to court. I just hope this time more school districts are involved, and whatever we do, we get some other label than Claremont being the Claremont decision or anything, because I think it was a step backwards public relations wise. But I think there are communities out there who are very concerned about property taxes, and you've got to get more of them involved. And I think the more you have unite, you take the state back to court, and I think whoever the governor is, they're going to have to deal with it. And this is why these potential governors, you ought to ask the question, what if the Supreme Court again says education funding is not adequate? How are you going to deal with it? And you need to put them on the spot and ask them, what are your specific solutions? That would be my suggestion.
So let me wait, Representative Gothier. So in response to your advice, Representative Cloutier, I'd like to hear from the school board and city council. We could try this and, based on what's already been said, and set up for our quarterly meeting in September, just to have it be, invite the gubernatorial candidates.
Yes.
And if we agree tonight that our number one priority to address as a collective governing body is education funding, then that's what we spend our time on. We can dilute our efforts, but this impacts the community more than anything else, I think.
It's the most important thing by far.
So if everybody agrees with that, then would you like to have the gubernatorial candidates invited? Because if the answer is yes, then we need to get on the schedule now.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes.
One thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Mayor, the primary, the gubernatorial, is September 11th. So if you have any meeting, I mean, one of the candidates in the Democrat is going to be eliminated come September 11th. I don't know who that is. I assume Governor Sununu will win renomination. So I just keep that in mind. I just want to make you aware of that.
Would you think,
so
whatever September is before Labor Day, would that be cutting it too close, or would you think August?
It'd be worth a shot, but if you want to hear from them all, you probably got to do it before September 11th, which is primary day.
Might have to go to them. You know, catch them on the campaign trail.
Yeah, I mean, I can do what I can to get either one or both of the Democratic, I can't speak on the Republican side, to come to Claremont for maybe a meeting, sort of a nonpartisan meeting, or when they come campaign, part of the day they spend with the elected officials, like you, Madam Mayor, the city manager, the acting superintendent, the school board. And I think it's important, the more they come to our community and talk with us, see what our problems, see what we're doing right too. That's important on a positive side, but see what we need. I think that would be plus, because they need to get out there. Both candidates need to see what the problems of the state, including our area.
So how about this? How about, if you would like me to, I can get on the phone and ask what their campaign schedule is, see if they're receptive to coming to Claremont. It would probably be an act of God to get them all together at once, so we might have to meet at different times according to their schedule. But if you'd like, I can reach out and contact them and then send you an email through, the normal process and find out what you would prefer. How about that? And then we can, because I think Representative Cloutier is right. We should get them here, hear what they have to say, and clearly communicate to them that if I'm understanding everybody correctly, that this is our number one priority as a collective governing body. So Representative Gothier?
I went to several of the HB 356 study committees about educational funding, and twice the assistant IG from Concord came to the meetings and informed them about Claremont's 1, 2, and 3, and that the legislature is basically in default of those lawsuits. So with it's going to be a there's going to be probably a new funding formula or modification of the funding formula that's gonna come out of all this legislation that's gonna happen this year, and I think there's gonna be a lot of it. That's why they had such a lengthy study committee. It went all the way from June, or even May, I think. It's gonna go all the way to this November, and it meets once a month, the way I understand it. And another thing that I talked to several of the experts at the House has been there 20, 30, 40 years, is what they say is that the city of Claremont could do great favors for itself. There's a rule of thumb that they use at the State House. You add up all your employees in your school district, and if you have more than 50% of those are non-teaching staff, then you're over your top heading. Now, if you were to balance that figure, it would do a lot to show the State House that the Claremont, New Hampshire is trying to right its own boat. You know, bring it up right. It's top
Okay.
heavy right now, probably.
Well, I don't know about that, what we can do, point well taken in that, when we do have the gubernatorial candidates here, I think we should have a very concise fact sheet on what we have been doing on our own dime. For instance, paying for the renovation of the school, high school, that was all on our own dime. You know, that school aid, building aid was on moratorium. We have been trying to do the right things, and I think we need to clearly communicate how much we have invested in our school system, but we can't do it alone. Dr. Goodwin?
Just to bring closure to this, I would caution you about comparing one community to another and comparing staff, because all communities have different needs. The demographics from one community can be very different from another. A teacher who used to work in our district now is in another community. She said the difference is enormous because of the demographics. But in truth, the playing field is not level. The Lebanon School District has fewer schools, fewer students, fewer teachers, fewer administrators. Their budget is more than $14 million larger than Claremont. The playing field isn't level. The playing field isn't level. And we lose so many of our teachers to other communities. We hire good, well, we invest, but we can't keep them. And you can't blame them. Elementary school teacher 2 years ago went to a nearby community. The difference in compensation, $24,000.
If you would, I would suggest putting together a list, a comprehensive list, so I can bring it to the State House, and I can say, this is what Claremont's been doing for itself. I would like to have that.
Well, we will make sure whatever fact sheet we put together, everybody has. So I think that would dispel a lot of bad information, and also clearly state the challenges that we've been facing and the investments that the community's been making.
And with that fact sheet, I could do a deeper debate,
Well,
because I was at a disadvantage this year, because I didn't have that information. If I have that information, I can really debate them.
Councilor Pope.
So maybe this is a good place to close it, but we're not alone here. I actually was trying to look up some information on what the stabilization grant losses were in communities, and just by accident, I came up with an article from New Hampshire Business Review dated June 8th, 2018. The title is it time for Claremont 3? And I'm going to give some figures from this, then I'll mention the communities. The effect of this was that there's 104 communities losing aid, 96 gaining a little bit, and 36 getting no aid at all anymore. And this article really doesn't interview anybody from Claremont. It's interviewing Berlin, Franklin, Newport, and Pittsfield as their best things. So, I mean, it would be to our advantage maybe to contact some of those people as we start to move forward
Okay.
as well, once again.
One other thing too, sort of off the subject, if the city or the school board is interested in any specific legislation, incumbents representatives like myself and Representative Goff can start filing bills around mid-September. Now, of course, if any of us don't make it back, then hopefully we get enough co-sponsors, someone would take it over. But we can sort of get a head start on everything starting around mid-September. I don't have the dates in front of me, but it's around that time. I'm just thinking if you have any ideas, and you may not, if you want to take your time, but we've got a few months. And then after the November election, there'll be another period for the newcomers and the incumbents can file bills again. So if you, the community, want anything specific, then I am open to, filing that legislation and trying to work with some of the other, my other colleagues, not only in the Claremont area, but I would hope to get from throughout the state as well, people who have some of the same problems, same challenges. So just keep that in mind.
Assistant Mayor Dillon?
Yeah, in response to Representative Cloutier, I would suggest, honestly, every time state funding for education has come up, it's devolved into a battle of the spreadsheets. Who loses, who wins, and it circles the drain and doesn't progress very far. However, every community, every school district has benefits to be gained by the state participation in the New Hampshire retirement system. Find those issues, and if there's any possible way that any representative can bring that issue back before the state legislature, everyone gains. And those are the winners that I think proceed or stand a better chance of proceeding in Concord.
And I think you're alluding to, Assistant Mayor, bills, legislation like House Bill 413.
Yes, the last
Which failed by just one vote.
Whatever the number is.
After you sent the letter. And I went on the House floor with the prime sponsor, Representative Cushing. We nearly made it, and that was one of the most frustrating defeats of this year.
And I supported that all the way.
So I guess what we're saying is, you've gotten our letter. I think that was signed by both the school board and the
Yeah, I
city
have it in
council.
front of me, in fact.
Yeah, and I put that together, and I think what the school board and city council would like to see is that you raise that issue again.
Definitely. I'm more than willing to do that, continue the work that the outgoing Representative Ray Gagnon had done, and Representative Cushing and myself. Keep pushing the issue. I think we might be able to win it next term.
So what's the status of that bill? I mean, it was
It's dead. I mean, it was the Representative Gagnon's committee, ED&A, passed it, but then it went to Finance, and Finance was the committee that basically killed it or recommended it be rejected. The full House went along. Of course, then we reconsidered, and we tried, with the help of your letter, to do it, making a convincing case based on a report from, I guess, the Retirement Commission, and unfortunately it didn't fly. It lost by one vote, which is heartbreaking to me. One of the most frustrating defeats I had ever experienced, certainly this year.
So can you submit an LSR for that?
Yeah, I will do it again. In fact, I may want to work with Representative Cushing. He may want to do it again, but I'd be more than happy to be a co-sponsor, or a sponsor if he doesn't want to.
Can I get consensus or not from the school board and city council? This is the retirement system issue, and right now, the state is not contributing anything into it. I think that bill 413 was 15%. Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's going to increase it. It wasn't going to totally restore it, but it was going to.
And years ago, it was 35%.
Yep.
And also, I want to say that we have a state of New Hampshire that is underfunded, really, is that it needs more revenue. And just like
Right, but I don't want-
sports, gamblings and all that stuff, we need more revenue for the state so you can get more funding for schools.
So what I'd like to focus on tonight, because we have very little time, is we're trying to focus our efforts and our conversation on the actions that we as collective governing bodies would like our legislators to take. So I think the direction that we're giving tonight, anybody pop up if they feel differently, is that we would like, however you deem it necessary to do, that we would like to resurrect 413 and resubmit it as a new LSR for the 2019 session. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another example of the state downshifting to the local communities.
Right,
Correct.
right.
And if the money keeps going away for stabilization, they want to walk away from education too. Says it right in the Constitution, they
Okay,
can't.
so let's keep we have finite period of time. So right now, we have communicated to our legislators that our number one priority is education funding. Whatever you can do to advocate for this community in recapturing some lost, even if we have to start, it's not a full solution, but freeze that 4% reduction. And then we would like you, however you deem fit, to resubmit an LSR for the House Bill 413. And then, what else, folks? Because we've got another couple of items. I'd like to hear, because I don't know the school district businesses, I'd like to know what some of your critical barriers are within the school district to having the kids earn the outcomes that you're hoping for. And if you could just kind of say that in a nutshell, that might give us some ideas on what else we would like the legislators to support.
I think it would be better, actually, to have a sit-down with the legislators and have us prepare some concrete information.
Actually,
Okay.
yeah.
But I will share with you, we were last month, the administrative team last month was going to bring forth the recommendations of the school board about having an in-house or on-site behavioral program to meet the needs of children who experience adverse childhood trauma. And we identified these children who can be physically aggressive, verbally assaultive, and I'm talking about K to 5. But that didn't go very far, but I can share this with you. The administration identified 19 children, K to 5, who are very disruptive, whose needs aren't being met consistently. Of that 19, 16 were grade K and 1. So when we talk about one school district and another school district, you can look at numbers, but you have to go much deeper into the demographics. It's not the child's fault they have this trauma. It's not the child's fault that they are behaving this way. They're not being naughty. They have some serious issues that need specific intervention. And having to be within the classroom does have a ripple effect across the board. So that's just one example, but there are others. And so in all due respect, Madam Mayor, I would recommend that the future administration sit down with the legislature and give you real concrete black and white examples, similar to what I even said just a few minutes ago about comparing one district to the other and the difference of finances, so you'll have a better understanding of the seriousness, because the playing field is not level.
Did you have information? I'd like to have that.
So to follow that up with Dr. McGoodwin, I happened to have a meeting with New Futures the other day. Their job is to advocate, educate, and collaborate to improve the health and wellness of all Granite Staters. They do a lot of work down at the State House in advocating for various bills. They did a lot with the lead bill in conjunction with a lot of other organizations. But they do in-depth presentations on policy issue areas, and if collectively we think that children's behavioral health is critical in our community. They do offer services for children with behavioral health concerns can be difficult to navigate in New Hampshire. This presentation offers an overview and calls advocates to get involved in improving the system. So this is a 1 to 2 hour presentation that if we would like them to come here to Claremont and give, we can invite them to do so. And that would further strengthen our advocacy between our community and what's going on at the State House. So if you would like me to arrange that, I can give you some preliminary information. We can set up a date through emails.
I would
good?
love, yes. Agreed.
And I'm going to have a new website up pretty soon, a new format, following on and letting the public know what exactly is going on down at the State House with roll call votes and all that. Who's doing what down there?
Okay.
And what aren't they doing?
Okay. So I think that was your top One of the behavioral health for children?
There are many more, that is a very serious issue.
Okay.
And we were, as I said, having some preliminary plans to address it. But that being said, I really would like, before I leave, to work with my colleagues and give you some multi-years of examples and what the priorities are. Because that information is critical. We can't measure a school district by numbers, by budgets. You have to really dig down into the demographics and the needs of the children and the needs of the schools.
Do you have time tomorrow to meet, tomorrow morning at your office?
If you could call my office, and I'm going to be here all next week. Tomorrow I don't, but Monday through Friday I do.
Yeah, I'll drop by your office tomorrow, make an appointment.
All right, Councilor Pope. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, of course, you told me, thank you. So I think we have quite a few action steps to take between now and our next meeting. If it's okay with everybody, I'd like to get on to item B, which is update on the transition for school superintendent. Is that okay with everybody?
Could I just speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, sure.
I took liberty of preparing this pink document. This is the agenda for the SAU 6 school board meeting next Thursday, June 28th. I also cut and pasted the specific meeting minutes of the June 14th SAU 6 board meeting that talks about the administration transition plan. We do have the chair of SAU 6 school board, Dr. Audrey Erickson, here, and I'm sure she could give you some specifics, but this gives you a global view as to what the SAU 6 has on its plate for a week from today as they begin this. This doesn't really provide what I think Dr. Erickson would like to speak to if she'd be interested in saying a few words.
Nothing like being on the spot.
Now that you're busy.
She can handle it.
Well, thank you once again for allowing me to speak. It's my first time at this meeting, and so I'm very happy to be here and participate with all of you. I will be coming more often because as chairwoman now of SAU 6, I have an integrated interest in what goes on in Claremont. So as far as the transition goes, we have begun the process of transitioning from Middleton to another superintendent. We anticipate this process being approximately a year long. It starts with assessing where we are right now, getting community feedback, not only the SAUs and the Claremont and the Unity School Board, but we'd like feedback from the greater community, the district staff, on what our strengths and weaknesses are and where we want to go from here. So we're creating a succession plan. We'll hope to do that on the 28th of June. We're going to be meeting regularly all summer long. We have meetings every 2 weeks now because we have a lot to do. But succession plan comes first. We meet again twice in July, during which time we will hopefully be creating questionnaires and sending them out to collect data from the public and the staff. We have a retreat scheduled for July 29th, during which we will work together and as a school board, as the SAU school board, and any public certainly that are willing to attend that meeting could have some input or some voice. But the idea of the retreat is to bring the school board together in a common goal and a common vision, because as you may be aware, the Unity School Board is a very different school board than the Claremont School Board. We have one school, we have a very small school, and our needs are very different than the Claremont needs. And so we need to come together to identify the greater need of the district, the entire SAU district, and so that's what we're hoping to do in July. In August, we'll have the New Hampshire School Board Association coming in to speak to us specifically about how to conduct a search, and at that point in time, we will be forming our search strategy, and we'll start to form a search committee. We'll be hiring, I suspect we'll be hiring consultants to help us with that search. We're looking, again, I'm speaking a little bit ahead because we do not have a succession plan approved, and that hopefully will happen in July. But keeping in a one-year time frame, which I think we're all pretty committed to, we need to start the search in the fall, hopefully to have a superintendent identified and hired by the spring to take place, to start the position in the summer so that they have a few months to prepare before the school year starts. So that's the proposed succession plan. Again, we're trying, I think we're all agreed to try to keep it to a one-year time frame to go pretty quickly. But we're just starting the process right now. We're going to be looking for a lot of feedback from all of the major stakeholders and would appreciate any feedback from this group here in particular, but parents, teachers, staff, and the greater community, of course. So that's the plan.
Any
Are
questions?
there any questions?
Good job.
Thank
Okay,
you.
well, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments about this particular agenda item before we move on? No? Okay. And then the final one under new business is update on municipal budgetary goals and the impact on the community. I put this on the agenda because, as you know, we just passed, the city council just passed its budget for FY19 on the 13th, I think, of June. And I'd like Mr. McNutt, if he'd like, to highlight some of the things that will be in the budget and how that will impact our community as a whole.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on June 13th, the City Council passed a $17.3 million budget. This includes $100,000 to begin the planning process towards the revitalization of Pleasant Street. For the city side, this revitalization primarily is comprised of fixing the underground utility work, which was planned for a long time. And in addition to that, we are taking the opportunity to look at redoing all of the sidewalks, all of the lighting, to make the downtown more walkable. We are going to be focusing on addressing the parking issue. Our goal is to create approximately 120 new parking spots. Because the end goal of the revitalization of Pleasant Street is to bring both commercial activity back to Pleasant Street, and to do that, to create a dedicated population that resides on Pleasant Street. So to create the conditions that would incentivize the property owners creating additional housing in the upper floors on Pleasant Street. So that's going to be very promising for Claremont. I kind of view Pleasant Street, our main street. If the city of Claremont was a web page, that would be the home page. That's where everybody goes and sees our community first. It's a gateway into the downtown. It's a gateway for newcomers to see Claremont. It also affects the perception and pride of Claremonters that have resided here their whole lives. Additionally, we've budgeted $300,000 this year for paving. So we're going to be doing a lot more road maintenance work, as well as our DPW is conducting a pavement category indexing to be able to classify the conditions of our road so that we are spending our money where it is needed on the roads that need the most work, and not just sort of picking roads at random because some folks think they're bad. It will be done with a more scientific viewpoint, so that we are making sure that we leverage every dollar invested in our roadways to its maximum. One of these roadways that I think benefits the school, because it's a heavily traveled route by students, is East Street. So our goal on East Street, we've had a culvert that needs to be repaired, and that's something that we're going to be moving forward with. The opportunity in fixing that culvert is we have to dig up a bunch of the road and sidewalk. So that gives us the opportunity to do sidewalk replacement. That work, and there will also be some rail trail work that connects into East Street. But primarily it's going to be fixing the culvert and new sidewalks. And that work is expected to begin in September. So that was primarily the major components to the budget, I think, that affect the school system.
So again, these investments that we're making on the municipal side is to move forward on our goal of expanding the tax base. So by expanding the tax base, we'll start alleviating the pressure on the tax rate. And then the other thing is the revaluation, which is our effort. The city manager proposed to do this in a 2-year cycle rather than a 5-year cycle. And this is to allow us to recapture the lost valuation, some of the lost valuation that we experienced a couple of years ago that shot our tax rate up over $5 overnight. So by doing this revaluation, hopefully we'll recapture lost valuation and you'll see, once again, less pressure on the tax rate, correct?
That is correct.
So we just wanted to give you an update on what we've been doing on our side. Our budget process is now complete, and so that's the update. Any other questions or comments before we go to next steps? No, okay. So let's review. Assistant Mayor Dameron suggested August 9th as a date to come together collectively to focus on one item only, and that would be the PIO position. Does that work for them, everybody?
Works for me.
You want to go for that? August 9th, Thursday, 6:30, same place, same time. Okay?
I don't think I'll be able to be there, just
Okay. And if we could get the minutes sometime in July, that would help us in our preparation for these. There's going to be several meetings coming up. And then the other steps, that's my favorite. I'm going to be calling the gubernatorial candidates and invite them to this community. We can try for one date, but I doubt we'll get that. We can try to get as many together on one date and have the others come on a different date. Does that sound good? The representatives are going to be focused on supporting any legislation that recaptures lost revenue in education funding. And Representative Cloutier has offered working with other representatives to resurrect HB 413 and the in the 2019 session.
And hopefully we can get some more extra highway money that was that last session.
That would be great.
Another
That would-
$300,000, would you like that?
That would be great. And then the last thing that I have on my to-do list is to contact New Futures to have them do that presentation on children's behavioral health so we can improve our advocacy in that area. Does that sound like I've got it all down? Okay. So, before we adjourn, any other final comments, questions for our legislators? Thank you for your time being here tonight.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any? So if not, motion to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, so that was your school board member,
Horsky and
and
Pierce.
and
Horsky and Pierce.
no, it was,
Oh, Benway.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.